All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting review. Today, I shall be reviewing the newest source book from Wizard of the Coast, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Quick reminder, if you enjoy stuff like this, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All of those things ensure that this gets seen by more people. That being said, if you hadn't guessed already, I like dragons. I like them enough that I think we're going on 5 years ago now. I actually wrote a dragon themed class. It's called the Dragon Knights, and in honor, in celebration of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons coming out, I created a brand new subclass for it, and there will be a link in the description below to get to that and the original Dragon Knight class, so definitely check those out. But yeah, dragons in general have been something that have really fascinated me for a really, really long time. It's one of the things I really like about the Dungeons and Dragons is the dragon aspect. And Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, funny enough, basically is an entire book about the dragons half of Dungeons and Dragons. Possibly we won't have to wait another like 5 or 6 years to get the dungeons half of Dungeons and Dragons covered, but you know, at least they got one half of their title covered after half a decade. But on a more serious note, the whole book is about dragons, and they actually say in the kind of introduction. Most of the book is about dragons, as in metallic, chromatic, and a new entry into 5th edition, gem dragons, which are really, really iconic parts of the Dungeons and Dragons, and have been since its inception. And just the sheer amount of information here is really, really interesting and fun. But when you actually get to the Bestiary, which for me personally was my favorite part of the book, not so much for the new stat blocks, though the new stat blocks are pretty cool, but each new section has a little bit of lore on the things, like the section on amethyst dragons talks about the specifics of, you know, what are amethyst dragons, where do they could come from, what are they kind of used to. If you have the original monster manual, when you go to the dragons section, each different color of the chromatic dragons and each different metal of the metallic dragons has their own section where it talks about motivations and the things like that. And the same thing is true here, but there's just so much more of it. So yeah, overall, I've now effectively skimmed through the entire book. I've read massive portions of it, but there's certain parts that were just kind of repetitious that I didn't read every single word. And overall, if you were looking for a recommendation on whether or not you should buy this, I generally tend to put D&D players or people interested in D&D merchandise into 3 categories. You have players, which makes up the largest category. You have dungeon masters, which makes up a smaller but increasingly growing category. And then you have people that are just interested in Dungeons and Dragons and either haven't had a chance to play or never intend to have a chance to play, but they treat it as fiction that is really enjoyable. And they tend to be a relatively small group of people, simply because the more you read about it, the closer you get pushed to being either a DM or a player. But they do exist. So in relation to those 3 different groups, first of all, as a DM, which is what I am almost exclusively, I have not played in a Dungeons and Dragons game in years at this point, because I run I have 2 campaigns that I'm running currently. I have a 3rd campaign that's non Dungeons and Dragons, that I run every other week. And I have like 4 or 5 other campaigns still in my brain that one day I might like to run. And I also have an entire campaign setting that I have designed that I'm constantly creating more and creating new maps for and new lore and things like that. So I'm a dungeon master. For dungeon masters, this is such a great book. Not just because of like the new monster stat blocks or things like that, but there's so much kind of world building things in here. And one of the things that I think a lot of dungeon masters tend to kind of devalue is the usefulness of tables for quickly creating or just helping generate ideas as far as creating your own NPCs and your own monsters and the things like that. And this has so many different creation tools in it that can help you not only just create new monsters for your party to interact with, but for you to create entire storylines around dragons and things like that. How to create really interesting dragon NPCs and dragon villains and dragon heroes and things like that. Yeah, for a dungeon master, this is a 100% yes. Definitely buy this. You don't have to think about this. For players, chapter 1 is called character creation, and it has all of your new character options. If the only reason as a player you would want to buy this book is for the new character options, I would say a $30 book is a little bit expensive for 2 subclasses and basically 3 new races, which are really just sub-races, really, because they're all almost identical except for some damage type changes and maybe one ability change. And there's also some feats in here, but I believe there's only 3 feats in here. So $30, I could not justify buying this into the entire book as a player just for the character creation options. If you go to D&D Beyond, most of the time, I'm not 100% certain about this, but I know with previous books, you could actually buy single subclasses if you wanted to use them in the character creator here. And since you can print off your character sheets and or just really just use, I'm actually not sure if you can print off your character sheets here, but I do know you can use the mobile app on your phone to play directly from your phone. So if all you're looking for is the subclasses, that might be a better way to do it. Or wait until your dungeon master purchases the book itself and either get them to add it as shared content in their campaign if they have a master's collection, or if they have a physical book, just borrow the book from them when you create your character. I couldn't say just from a character creation standpoint that this is worth it. However, if you enjoy creating backstories and telling stories with your characters, there is a fair amount of lore in this book that you could use to flavor your backstories. Case in point, one of my characters in one of my campaigns, without going into too much detail, has some connection with dragons in there, but backstories. And as I was reading through some of the descriptions, specifically in the Bestiary, I found one that I'm like, oh my god, I have got to talk to this player, because we could effectively retcon this into their backstory, and it fits so well with what we described before, and it would help kind of define some the things with it. Like it fits so perfectly. So yeah, if you do like the kind of storytelling aspect, this is a really good book for that, and I can definitely justify the purchase price for everything else in it. Again, if you're just looking at this as a way to get some new subclass options or new ways to build your character, see if D&D Beyond allows you to just buy them individually, which again, I don't know if they do it with this because I bought the book, so it won't let me see that. But I do know they used to do it with previous things. Like I bought the Way of Shadow subclass for my monks so I could build the monk I played in the Adventures League forever ago. So yeah. Finally, for that third little group of people that don't actually play the game but are just really interested in it as a work of fiction, this is really, really cool. The opening of the book itself has this basically epic poem called what's it called? I'm actually going to read it right now. Come on, where is it? Elegy for the First World is this epic poem that they actually open the book with, and it has this really cool art in it. And the rest of the book relates dragons all the way back to this original epic poem, which is really, really interesting. And some of the lore that they put in here, without getting too spoilery, kind of talks about kind of a primal world before the multiverse was created, called the First World, that was created by Bahamut and Tiamat and a third dragon called Sarador. And that first world that they call it the First World is what eventually splintered into all the different worlds of the multiverse, which is where we get things like Eberron and Toro, which is where the Forgotten Realms is, and Earth, spelled OER TH, which is where the Greyhawk campaign setting is. And all the different campaign settings are technically part of this kind of multiverse. And if you like Spelljammers, they're each in their own crystal sphere, and you can travel between them using Spelljammers and things like that. But anyway, so it adds this entirely new lore that theoretically connects to every single campaign setting. And then, like most books like this that Wizards puts out for 5th edition, it will actually talk about multiple settings. Like they always mention Toro and Forgotten Realms because that is the official setting for 5th edition. But they also talk about Greyhawk. They talk about Krynn, which is where the Dragonlance series is set. They make mention of Eberron, obviously, because that's been officially published. So yeah, if you are one of those people that just likes Dungeons and Dragons in general, just for the massive amount of lore, maybe you were brought into Dungeons and Dragons from reading the Dragonlance series, or from Ed Greenwood and his books, or R.A. Salvatore, and you love the fiction. This is such a good collection of fiction that you can just kind of read and really kind of get lost in. Obviously, it's not a novel or anything like that. It doesn't tell a story from beginning to end. But if you like reading up about lore in that, this is a great book for you. So those are my recommendations. DMs, definitely get it. Players, get it if you like lore. Otherwise, maybe look for a way to buy the individual class features on or character creation features on their own. And then basically lore junkies and people that are just interested in the fiction of Dungeons and Dragons, get the book. It's really, really nice, and I think it's very well made. So going to a little bit more in depth, I'm basically just going to hit each chapter and talk about some of the stuff in it and the cool stuff in there. So the kind of introduction is again called Elegy for the First World. I'm actually not sure if it's Elegy or Elegy. I believe it's Elegy. It's a type of song, and I should know that. I mean, I studied music for over a decade. I really should know. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But anyway, it talks about the First World and kind of gives an introduction to the book like they normally do. It's got some beautiful artwork in it. Overall, it's short, it's sweet. Read it, it's fun. Nothing in there could be considered, spoilery for a campaign or something like that. It's just good, fun fiction. Chapter 1. Character creation. The character creation, I like. I think it's really, really interesting. It starts with the Draconic races, which is basically just gives you 3 different kinds of Dragonborn you can be. You have Chromatic Dragonborn, Gem Dragonborn, Metallic Dragonborn. And for the most part, again, without getting into too much detail here, they're interesting. They all have breath weapons, and then they all have kind of secondary features that make them feel unique. So chromatic dragonborn is going to feel different than a gem dragonborn. That's going to feel different than a metallic dragonborn. The other thing that's nice about this, this book introduces gem dragons into 5th edition. For those of you who don't know, there are 3 kinds of dragons into the Dungeons and Dragons. Or 3 kinds of main dragons. You have kind of subclasses like Dracoliches and other things. But there's 3 basically flavors. You have the chromatic dragons, who are descendant from Tiamat. You have the metallic dragons, who are descended from Bahamut. And then you have the gem dragons, who are descended from a 3rd dragon god, basically, called Sarador. Basically, the basic rule of thumb is chromatic dragons are evil aligned. They can be lawful, neutral, or chaotic, but they are all evil aligned. Basically, chromatic dragons are generally bad guys. Metallic dragons are all good aligned. They can be lawful, neutral, or chaotic aligned, but generally metallic dragons are viewed generally as more good dragons. And then the gem dragons are neutral aligned dragons. So they can still be lawful, neutral, or chaotic. But if they are neutral dragons, it's called true neutral, if you're not familiar with the alignment thing. What that means, since, again, the alignment grid is kind of being thrown away because people misused it for 30 years, and so we don't really care about alignments anymore. What that generally does mean, though, is metallic dragons in general are going to be kind of selfless, and they're going to think about what is the greater good. And depending on how much they like order and laws, they may push a little bit more towards lawful, meaning they want structure and government and things like that, and that is what's going to do the best for the most amount of people. Or they may tend a little bit more towards, no, we want freedom and we want choice, and we want people to not be tied down or forced to do things that they don't want to, or they feel a gig against, or things like that. And that's really where you're going to see the metallic dragons. It doesn't mean you can't have a quote-unquote bad metallic dragon. Just because you are selfless does not mean you can't do bad things. And then the chromatic dragons, again, are going to be much more self-motivated. They're going to worry much more about what's good for them, what is going to give them what they want, and whether they're a little bit more around rules and regulations, where they'll try and make you sign contracts like a devil will, and try and kind of manipulate words and things like that, or whether they're a little more of chaotic, where they just want to see the world burn. That's what you're going to see with chromatic dragons. And then gem dragons, their neutrality is one of the most interesting things about them, simply because they're not going to be selfless or selfish. They tend to have a lot of different motivations that don't really have to do with the idea of selflessness versus selfishness. And that can be a really interesting thing to deal with. One of the most fun things you can deal with, and by fun, I mean annoying, to be perfectly honest, is an apathetic, really, really powerful creature. We see this in actual real life all the time. If you see someone with a lot of power that is not using that power in a way that you think they should be, it can be incredibly frustrating, because you go, if I had that power, I would make sure this particular thing happens. It's one of the reasons why famous people in general have been pushed towards activism. I think that's the word I'm looking for. This is hard to talk. So much because people see them having all this money and power and influence, and large groups of people will attack those in power if they feel that they are not using their power in a way that is beneficial to other people. And you see it all the time. So with gem dragons, they can be incredibly powerful, but they can also just not really care about the player characters and their plights. You know, let's say, you know, this other dragon is coming through and it's destroying the world, and you know, this ancient gem dragon could really help you guys out. And they might go, why? Well, he's trying to destroy the world. He's not going to destroy my horde. If he does, I'll kill him. Well, what if you need our help? Well, I don't need your help. Why would I need the help of mortals? I'm an ancient gem dragon. But if you do this, why? There's no reason for me to do anything for you. Go away. Again, that can be such an entertaining thing. Again, not particularly fun, but it can be a very entertaining thing for players to deal with as they deal with this thing that could literally give them the upper hand in a battle that they quite literally cannot win on their own. And yet they're like, why? I really don't care. I've got no interest in saving a world. It doesn't make sense to me. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves. Bye. So yeah. Anyway, so those are cool. The subclass options, both of these have shown up in... both the subclass options have showed up in Unearthed Arcana. I didn't make a comparison of... the two subclass options are Way of the Ascendant Dragon Monk, and then the Drake Warden Ranger. I did compare the Ascendant Dragon Monk with their Unearthed Arcana version because I hated the Unearthed Arcana version because it was just broken. It was super overpowered. It didn't fit the monk at all. It tried to turn it into just this huge damage-dealing torrent, which doesn't fit with how the monk plays in 5th edition, and I just couldn't stand it. The Drake Warden, if I remember correctly, I enjoyed it. They do make some changes for the Ascendant Dragon to the point where I will be doing a D&D deep dive on that. I have to check the Drake Warden to see if it's different enough to justify a new deep dive, but I will be doing one in the Ascendant Dragon because it's different enough that I've changed my opinion on it. So look for that. And then they have a section called Heroes of the Dragon, which is basically ways, just kind of things that you can use to kind of give a... sorry, that's something on my glasses. That you can give yourself a little bit of flavor to your character, no matter whether or not they have a draconic subclass. You can use this to kind of give them a little bit of a flavor. It's lore based, it's role playing based stuff, but it's still pretty cool. And then finally, draconic feats. They have 3 new feats. They're kind of interesting. One of them seems a little bit overpowered, but I will be doing a D&D deep dive on the new feats to talk about that stuff. Overall, chapter 1, it's interesting. It's fun. It's relatively short, so it's a pretty easy read. Yeah. Chapter 2 is called Dragon Magic, and it's super cool. It starts off with a bunch of new spells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7 new spells. They're all really cool. Like I went and I read through every single one of those spells, and every one I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then we get to the next one, I go, oh, that's cool. And then I get to the next one, oh, that's cool. So they're all interesting. They all do different things, and you could create builds around these spells. Like I think they're that interesting. Next, they have a bunch of new magic items. The magic items themselves are cool. Don't get me wrong. But the really cool things in here are what are called Hoard magic items. These are magic items that are central to a dragon's hoard that, depending on how long they've been in the dragon's hoard and how old the dragon is, will have different levels of power. So they're basically one magic item that has 4 different levels of power. And the cool thing about them is they're built around the idea that they basically gain power from the radiant kind of magic that infuses dragon hordes. And so if you do want to have a dragon themed campaign, these horde magic items could be really interesting, especially since one of the things they talk about here is how to basically power up these items. And there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I won't go into all of them. You should really get the book to learn about them. But one of the ways that you can power up items is if you slay a dragon and then you leave a horde magic item in their trove for, I think they say 8 hours in here. It's a specific amount. It will actually increase the power of that item up to the highest state that age dragon can have. But you have to put it into the dragon's horde within 1 hour of the dragon dying. So it creates this really interesting thing where if you wanted to create a campaign around basically dragon hunting, you could have one of these, or they have multiple different horde items that show up that I really, really love. You could have one of these horde items show up, and basically one of the motivating factors for your players would be to power up their horde items by slaying more powerful dragons. So it's really, really interesting. Like I said, they have multiple different types of horde items that show up that I really, really like. The other thing, and I've talked about this before, is you can use these as kind of a template to design your own horde magic items and kind of figure out what their different power levels could be and things like that. Like, it is such a cool thing. So definitely to check it out. And then finally, draconic gifts are basically just gifts that a dragon could give to someone, either as a gift for helping a dragon, or maybe something that would happen when the dragon dies as a way to kind of empower your players. They're cool. They're really interesting. It'll be up to the DM to kind of decide if they want to use these gifts or not. But it does create another way that you can reward players for doing kind of the thing that you think about doing when you start playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is slaying a dragon. Well, if you slay a dragon, now I can give you a gift for slaying that dragon. And again, not only can these, you can just take them out of the book and use them, you can also use them as templates for doing other things. One of the things they talk about at the very end is perhaps using feats as draconic gifts, where if you help a really powerful dragon, or maybe you defeat a really, really powerful dragon, your DM might be able to gift you a feat from the dragon's power. And they give some examples of some feats that would make sense depending on the dragon that you were fighting. So yeah, there's a lot in here that's really interesting and fun, and gives you different ways to reward your players. So really, really like that. Chapter 3, I think, might be the longest chapter, other than the chapter 5 and 6, which are just really long lists of dragon stuff. It's called Dragons in Play. And effectively, it gives you ideas about how to role play dragons. It talks about just, basically what are dragons, their lifespan, how they reproduce, what happens when they die, what happens if they deal with undeath, how they deal across, dragons existing in multiple campaign settings, like the same dragon showing up in multiple campaign settings. Things like a Chardalon has shown up in multiple campaign settings. It's an ancient red dragon. Things like that. So this is very much kind of tooled towards dungeon masters. But some of the sections could be really good if you wanted to kind of build your character as a follower of a dragon. Like maybe you wanted to be a paladin of Bahamut. You could read this stuff and get some stuff. Get some ideas about how to build a character around the theme of dragons. Towards the end, you have a section on dragon encounters that talks about not just creating dragon fights, but different ways you might encounter a dragon: good dragons, bad dragons, neutral dragons, and they could be role-playing interactions. They could be combat encounters. They could be just kind of puzzles and things like that. It gives you a lot of different ideas about how your group could encounter dragons beyond, oh, look, a large lizard breathing fire on us. Let's kill it. And then they have a section on dragon adventures, where if you wanted to, in your campaign, have, a series where you're dealing with dragons, you can use that. Or entire campaigns run around dragons and things like that. They have a section on dragon campaigns. So yeah, overall chapter 3 very much focused on DMs, but there's still some good stuff in there. And then the last part of it, the dragon encounters, dragon adventures, and dragon campaigns are really, really great if you want to add that to your campaigns. Chapter 4 is called Lairs and Hoards. Dragon Lairs is something in the original monster manual. Monster lairs are a thing, and legendary monsters in general, basically monsters that have legendary actions, a lot of them will have lairs as well, and lairs will kind of affect the world around them. And so this kind of talks about specifically, what kind of things different dragon types, what their lairs would be like. They have maps and things like that of the different lairs. I don't think it's in this one. I think it's in the next one that has that. They talk about the dragon hordes, and which is a huge part of dragons. Even good dragons have hordes. They like to collect things. Some of them it's gold and money. Some of them it's stories and poems and the things like that. But all dragons have this kind of compulsion to hoard. So they have hordes that are more specifically defined, and they also have an entire section called "What's in a Horde" that actually tells you the different stuff that you would find in there. Helps you to build custom hordes for dragons that your parties might face. Overall, just a really, really cool thing, mostly for DMs. I don't see a lot of player use in there. For Chapter 5, you have the Draconomicon. The Draconomicon. I might be mispronouncing that. Basically, there's a shit ton of stuff about how to build dragons for your campaigns. It has traits, ideals, connections, and flaws. This is where the maps of the various layers are. You don't have to use these specific maps, but they do give you a good idea of what a dragon's lair would look like. If you did want to create a lair for a specific kind of dragon. They have a list of treasures that you might find in there, beyond like magic items and that, which all dragons tend to really enjoy. But they'll have tables that show you different things, like maybe an amethyst dragon, to give you an example. One of the things on the amethyst dragon art objects list is a complex orrery of the planes of existence made of engraved movable plates of precious metals and set with gemstones. All of those things, like, it's so much more fun for players when they find a large group of things, instead of going, yeah, you find art and objects worth 200 platinum. Cool, we got a number. But if you described them, hey, one of the things in there is this complex orrery of the planes of existence made of engraved movable plates of precious metals and set with gemstones. Wow, it's really cool. How much do you think it's worth? Well, then you can go into stuff like that. And they may decide to keep the item instead of going, oh, look, money. And it may become important later on. Like that thing of the planes of existence, you might be able to use that as a hook for the rest of your campaign, having them transport themselves to different planes of existence if you want to do kind of a plane hopper kind of thing. So yeah, overall, it is unbelievably detailed. This is one of the sections where I started reading all of it, and then it's so long, and it has everything. One thing I did find interesting, they introduced gem dragons, which I like and I'm familiar with. They also introduced this thing called deep dragons, which they're mushroom dragons, and they're super cool. They kind of look similar to the two. I can't. It's a poison bird thing from Monster Hunter that I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. But I fought it in Monster Hunter a million times. It's annoying as hell. But yeah, so you have these deep dragon things that are super cool, and they're mushroom dragons. They have a section on dragon turtles, which if you watched the second campaign of Critical Role, there was a section of the campaign that actually dealt with a dragon turtle that was really, really cool. And dragon turtles exist in the monster manual, but you just have a single dragon turtle and a little bit of lore on it. This actually gives them as much detail as the other dragons, and they're super cool. The artwork for dragon turtles is just massively cool. Like, they just look super cool, and especially if you're having a sea-based campaign, dragon turtles can be a super fun thing to just kind of pop up, because they are effectively dragons that live underwater, and they can be terrifying. They can be island sized. They're super cool and fun. So yeah, they have dragon turtles. There's so many things. Moonstone dragon is another one that I wasn't familiar with. It's a gem dragon. So yeah, that's the Draconomicon. That would be a section that I would not recommend just reading, because it's so much about how to build them that it is a very dry read. Chapter 6, however, is the Bestiary, and this is super cool for folks. On D&D Beyond, they actually separated into sections. First section is A through C. The second very long section is D. Who would have thought in the Book of Dragons the D section would be as long as a bunch of other ones? And then it goes E through K, and then L through Z. And there are so many really cool things in here. Again, this is where you're going to find out about the various gem dragons and the motivations and things like that. There's tons of amazing artwork in here. Another thing that they add, there are effectively, up until this point, there have been 4 levels of dragons you can find. You had wormlings, which are basically baby dragons. You had young dragons, which, like a tier 2 party, could take out a young dragon generally without too much difficulty. And a tier 2 party facing an adult dragon would be very difficult. Tier 3 would be a little easier. And then you had what were called ancient dragons. Ancient dragons are some of the most powerful creatures in D&D. They're all legendary. They do major damage. They have introduced a 4th level of dragon, which is called a Great Worm. Oh boy, they're so cool. They just give kind of generic great worms that you can kind of customize in here, but they have a chromatic variety, a gem variety, and a metallic variety, and they are all amazing. They use some really, really amazing, cool mechanics in there. That a battle with a Great Worm is going to be an event for your players, and they're designed to be event style monsters. That's what they're built to be, and I think it's so cool. So yeah. In addition to that, there's some other really, really amazing stuff in here. There are things that I didn't quite expect to show up in here. Things like Draconic Shard, which can be related to a magic item, which are really cool. Dracohydras are really, really interesting. Dragonbone Golems. The other really, really creepy one, which has been leaked. They talked about this in some of the press for this. Is an Elder Brain Dragon. If you don't know, Illithids are really, really powerful Cthulhu creature kind of things. Illithids themselves are humanoid, but they have squid faces. And they're really, really tough to deal with. Like, players that have to deal with Illithids, you generally don't deal with them until high tier 2 or tier 3, and they are a just beast to deal with. But Illithids will be part of a colony that are all controlled by a thing called an Elder Brain, which is basically a massive brain that's stuck in a pool of liquid. And that's the one thing that make Elder Brains dealable. Like the fact that an Elder Brain cannot leave its little pool of water is the only thing that has been keeping Illithids from running the world. Elder Brain Dragons are where Illithids take, I think it has to be an ancient dragon, though it may be able to be an adult. Anyway, take a big old dragon, they torture it for a long time, and then they implant an Elder Brain on it. And the Elder Brain takes over the dragon. It is now a flying dragon. It's now a flying Elder Brain with a dragon attached to it. It is the most terrifying thing ever. It's super, super cool. You definitely have to check it out. Yeah, and there's a bunch of other really, really interesting things. Like a hollow dragon is an undead metallic dragon, which is really interesting. An undead that's not evil is crazy. A horde mimic, I will let you have your own nightmares about that, but whoa, is it cool. Just so many super, super amazing things. They also have a section on sea serpents, which I love, because sea serpents are super fun too. Again, if you're doing a water-based campaign, dragon turtles and sea serpents, they're super fun. So yeah. So overall, that is Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. It is a well-written book. I've got to say, and this may just be me, because again, I have a thing for dragons. I really, really like them. One of my favorite games ever. It's one of the things that inspired my Dragon Knight class, is The Legend of Dragoon, because it's got dragons in it. And those dragons are all like insects, which is really weird, but it's cool. It's really so I'm really into dragons. The artwork in this book is incredible. Some of the most amazing artwork they have put out. They are, and again, it might be just that I have a thing for dragons. It also, dragons themselves are really majestic creatures. So the fact that all of this artwork has to deal with these massive kind of world-altering creatures just makes them super, super cool. Yeah. Final thoughts on this book. I absolutely love it. I was a little bit worried that, again, it only had 2 new subclasses, and I really, really like subclasses. So I was a little bit worried about it only having 2 new subclasses, that I wasn't really going to like it. And I know a ton of lore about dragons, so I'm like, well, maybe this is going to be just a waste of time because I know so much about dragons already. No, I learned so much about dragons from this book and how they interact with so many different campaign settings in that. There are so many new things that I've never seen before. Like I said, I love the gem dragon stuff. The horde magic items are so cool, and I just adore that. The bestiary is fun to just read. Like literally, just going through the bestiary and reading all the cool stuff in there is fun. It really, really is. So yeah, overall, get the book. It's super, super good. If you can support a friendly local game store by buying it through them, do it. Because of all the stuff that's happened over the past year, a lot of them closed. And the ones that are still open, I will guarantee, are hurting right now. So if you can, buy it through them. I do all my stuff digitally now. It just makes it easier for me. It makes it easier for making videos and stuff like that. So I got it through D&D Beyond. I love the D&D Beyond version. It's super easy to go through. So yeah, it's great. Pick it up. Love it. Otherwise, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you'd enjoy this, like, subscribe, turn notifications on in the comments down below. If you've gotten the book, what do you think about it? I would love to hear your opinions. If you haven't gotten the book, have what I told you, does it sound interesting to you? Is this something that you want to get? And specifically, what are the things that kind of sold the book for you? Was it the new magic items? Was it the new character creation stuff? Was it all, your ability to build your own dragon? Was it all the new creatures? Let me know in the comments down below. As a quick reminder, there will be a link to my Dragon Knight class and the additional subclasses that I just updated with a brand new class. It's called the Ravager. You get to use a special weapon with this class called the Dragon Claws, which are super cool. It's a hyper-mobile class. Please pick those up. Share this video around so other people get an idea of what it is. Otherwise, again, that's all for me, and I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye.